Our golden retriever Tucker could not be more lovable, but the one thing I don't love is when he gets a little smelly like all dogs can. Thank goodness we discovered Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder. This magic powder is a game changer. It acts like a dry shampoo and it keeps his coat clean and dry by eliminating the bacteria that causes odor in the first place. A quick sprinkle all over keeps him fresh and handsome. I recently started using this product in his ears by gently applying with a small fluffy brush, and now that stinky, yeasty smell that you know dogs can get in their ears is gone. If your dog smells, this is the answer, let me tell you. So go to coatdefense.com and use the code MOMMA15, that's MOMMA 15, for 15% off your order. Hey everyone, we're so glad you're joining us for this brand new episode of the podcast. If you enjoy Got It From a Mama, would you do me a favor and hit the follow, subscribe, or like button on your podcast player? If you share our podcast with your friends and leave us a review if you've even got a couple of minutes, it helps so much. So thank you in advance for doing that. So how do you go from being a confessed slob of a housekeeper to a respected decluttering and house cleaning expert? Well, that's what makes Dana K. White so fascinating to me. But guess what? Jesus doesn't care about your messy house. It's true, and it's the name of one of Dana's books. Dana is my guest on this episode, and she personally knows the shame and the judgment that women can feel when a messy house gets the best of them. It's happened to all of us. Dana's books help women not only with practical steps toward a more manageable home, but also focuses on the spiritual journey that accompanies those steps. So let's jump into my conversation with Dana K. White. Dana, we are very thrilled to have you on the Got It From My Mama podcast. We like anything that helps empower the moms out there. And we all know that keeping our house is just one of those big things that can really weigh on us. And we want to keep a nice home for our family, right? I mean, at the end of the day, as moms, that's kind of ingrained in us.
Absolutely. But my story is that it was ingrained in me to want that, and yet I could not do it. Right? Like I was completely incapable, not for lack of trying, not for lack of trying to figure out and find the routine and all that. Like I worked and worked and worked and worked, and my house was constantly a disaster. It was a real source of shame for me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
it was deeper than just having a messy house, right? I mean, it
yeah,
was kind of
it was an
connected
identity
to
issue,
you and your
honestly.
identity.
Yes, it was because I'd been messy my whole life, right? But before I became like really truly, I was the kid who in high school, like I opened up my locker and everything just fell out, But I also, the teachers who will say things like, "Oh, kids can't succeed if their space is messy." And I'm like, "Well, I was salutatorian, so I was perfectly fine." I mean, like it doesn't go together the way you think. And so I was always able to function just fine, but I didn't like not being able to find things. I didn't like things being messy, but I assumed once I got married that I wouldn't be messy anymore because then it was going to matter to me, right? And that did not automatically solve it at all.
Mm.
But I still didn't despair until after I had kids, because even though I was still messy when I got married, you could not have told me that I was not going to finally figure it out after I had kids, because I was like, well, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, what else am I going to have to do? Right.
Yeah, and you would think, you'll have to be organized and this will just be
Exactly.
part of it, right?
Exactly. And so I just assumed I was going to reach a point in my life where all this was going to come naturally to me. And so when I hit that point and it did not, then that's when the identity crisis happened, right? Because it was like, I specifically remember where I was standing. Like I was changing my son's diaper. He's 23 now. So this was many years ago, right? But he was 4 months old, and I remember enjoying, because I was loving being a mom. I turned around and there were like things spread out all over the floor. And I was like, he is 4 months old. This is not his fault. This is my fault. And that was like the moment when I realized there's something wrong with me. Like, I think that this is like an real issue with my brain and how I function, And so not that I quit trying or anything, but I was just like more and more bewildered as I continued to try so hard and not be able to solve it.
Right. As you've been learning more about, and now, of course, you help and empower other people just to learn more about kind of why we are the way we are and to give ourselves grace and all the things. You mentioned being like a messy teenager or whatever. And I often wonder, having two kids that operate a little bit differently, are we born mess? I mean, some of us are really prone to having to have, all the things in all the right places. And then other people, like you mentioned, can operate under chaos and clutter.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you said that because that's one of the big misconceptions, right? Is I would have people who were trying to be helpful because I would be like, okay, how are you doing this? Right. And people would say things like, well, I mean, I have to get it cleaned up or otherwise I can't concentrate. And I'm like, well, that's not helpful for me because I actually can concentrate real well. And that's how it gets so disastrous, right? So, a big thing for me as I worked on my home, so I started out writing a blog back in 2009, right? Like I was desperate to be a writer, did not want to write about this. Like this was never something I was going to write
I was
about.
going to say, could you even have imagined that you would, be the queen of the clean home?
My mother will tell me that she still laughs almost every day when she thinks about it. Like that this is my job, right? Like it is hilarious. God's hilarious, right? But I was working on my home. I mean, I wanted to be a writer, found out what blogs were. I was like, that's it. I've got to have a blog. But I didn't start it because my house was still a disaster and I was like, I have to figure this out. I cannot take on another creative project because I know that when I do that, it gets even worse. I was like, I got to figure this out first. Tried and tried and tried and did not and figure it out and was more and more frustrated because before I always had the good reasons, like, it's the right thing to do. I want to provide a, good, right place for my family. And now I had this thing it was keeping me from doing that I was desperate to do. And so as a compromise that God gave me, right, was to write about that. And I thought it was going to be a temporary practice blog for a couple of months, made up a fake name, made up a new email address. Like I didn't tell my husband what I was doing. And I was just like using it as a way to stay focused. So I wasn't teaching anything to anybody at first. Actually, for several years, I was like, why would you want to learn from me? That makes no sense. But I was writing about what I was doing. And as people did start reading it, they started to say to me, that's how my brain works. That's exactly how I think. Those are the things that I thought I was the only one, like I thought I was the only one too. And I started to see back in the day, you could click on somebody's name when they left a comment and see their blogger profile. And I saw that these were highly creative women, very driven, creative women. I was a theater arts teacher before I had kids. There were
Say
lots
no
of,
more. You said the word theater.
right? I mean,
Yeah, that creative gene is on. We talk about it in my family. I have a
yes.
home full of creatives with a husband who is not. And so it's a very interesting dynamic. Like
Yes.
my boys are, one's a music artist, one's a videographer, a photographer. And then, of course, I'm in journalism and writing and, all the things. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. It's that highly, they were poets and artists and writers and I mean, just all sorts of different creative types. And I went, there's a relationship there. Like this creative side of me that I've always been glad to be creative, like it's me, it's the identity that I enjoy and I embrace, is actually directly related to my struggles in my home. And not that all creative people are messy, but the vast majority of messy people are highly creative, right? So that relationship actually helped me see this is how my brain works.
Right.
And it was not, and sometimes people hear that and they're like, oh, that means you just say that it doesn't matter. And I'm like, I've written 3 books about how to get your house under control. Obviously, I think it matters, right? But it gave me permission to not feel like a failure when traditional organizing advice didn't work for me because most people who write organizing advice are organized and their brains are very different from my brain. And so I was always lost on page 3. Like I would look at their before pictures and think, well, I wish that was my after picture. Like I'm like, we were not starting from the same thing. And so that's where I have come in. It took me a long time to accept that this is actually the thing I'm supposed to be writing about. What? But I'm like the translator, like these things that a lot of naturally organized people who want to be helpful don't know that certain things need to be explained to the person like me, right? Not because we're not intelligent, because we see the world differently, right? Like we don't see limits. It's a wonderful quality, except when it comes to, your stuff.
Yeah, but like you said, there's this niche that you were able to
Yeah.
fill by
Yeah.
being able to say, I think so often, especially kind of in mom culture or whatever, we need someone that we can say, oh, me too, and you were able to do that. Oh, I get you. Here's why you feel so overwhelmed by your home. And here's a better way, perhaps, for you to tackle this, right?
Right, exactly. And, I hear from people on a daily basis, and the most consistent thing that I hear from people is that their turning point to actually being able to change what they thought was unchangeable in their home is knowing that they weren't alone,
Mm, that's
and
awesome.
therefore knowing I'm not broken.
Right.
Like, I am not defective. I'm actually have a great brain. It just works very differently. And knowing that is the freedom to move forward.
The newest book is called Jesus Doesn't Care About Your Messy House. I love the title.
Thank
And
you.
honestly, even the title alone, but the whole book it's really full of grace. And I think that that's what people who do struggle in this area need to give themselves some grace in the fact that, everything is not perfect. You may operate differently, that there's so much to be learned.
Yeah, there's the grace allows me to actually make the change because it's not out of shame. But even if I never make the change, the grace is still grace. I mean, like it's both ways. Like it is freedom. The grace gives me the freedom to actually do the thing I wanted to do, but also the grace is there even for my, things I never am able to accomplish and
Yeah.
tackle.
What was your goal what was the message or the piece of encouragement that you felt like there were people out here who needed to hear this message that Jesus doesn't care about our messy house. He cares about who we are. We're made in his image. He cares about our heart.
Right. I think, it was because of my own process. So I call it my deslobification process, where, I was writing, started in nine. I assumed as a Christian woman, because there's a layer, often I'll have men who are like, why don't you write to men? And I'm like, listen, you can learn from all the stuff I wrote, but we cannot deny that there is an identity thing that comes along with being a woman who this stuff is supposed to be easy for us. Right. And then there's another layer that comes from being a Christian woman because we don't need to get into all the reasons why it's kind of been like, oh, Christian women are supposed to not only be great at it, they're supposed to love it, and so it's like,
Yeah, the Proverbs 31 woman, right?
yeah, I go deep into that in the book. Exactly. But yeah, so as I was working on my home, about a year before that, I had started uh, for the first time, like deep daily Bible study. I had been a Christian. I had followed Jesus. I had studied the Bible. But it was my first time where I really dove in consistently every single day and was shocked and amazed at the change that happens just from being in the Bible every day. Like just it gave me such a deeper understanding of who God is. There's so many things that I was like, wait a minute, heard that a different way when it was explained by somebody else. But when I actually read it in the Bible, I'm like, whoa, okay, now I get it. Right. Like, so it's just very transformational for me. So I had started working on my house in this blog, and I assumed that at some point God was going to lead me to the verse that I had missed. That if I had not missed that verse, this would have been easy. Like, if once I find this verse, it's all going to be easy, right? Like, I'll get it. Oh, okay. Now it's easy to keep my house under control, or the spiritual concept or something. Like, I assumed God was going to show me something. And instead, what he was showing me again and again and again was it's never your effort that brings you closer to me, right? Like that's not it. It's only about what God has done through Jesus to bring us to him. Like, so our efforts are completely useless. And if we think that our efforts are what's getting us closer to God, then we don't actually understand who God is and what he wants from us. So that was becoming more and more real to me as I was working on my house, and God was showing me, Dana, I don't care about your messy house. I never have. I care about your heart, right? Your motivation. I've seen how hard you've been trying. I have seen your brain and how it works because God created my brain and how it works. Like, it was on purpose that he made me the way that I am. And so as I learned that, and it, was so freeing to me to realize this is not a spiritual failure. that my house is messy, right? And I also hear, because I hear from women all the time who will tell me some pretty honestly difficult stories about things that have been said to them as Christian women that, are basically somebody is trying to be helpful, but they think it's helpful to say things like, well, God is a God of order. Like,
Mm,
that's supposed to be me saying that to you is supposed to somehow solve your messy house problem that you've been trying to solve. Or you read the Proverbs 31 woman or whatever, like things that they're trying to be helpful because they don't understand the struggle. And when you look at somebody's house that's messy, it is very easy to assume that they don't care. I know that's not the case, right? Like, it is actually the most hurtful thing for someone to assume that a messy house is a result of laziness or not caring. Because when my house was out of control, I was like, well, I can't argue and say, no, I care, because it doesn't look like I care. But I
right.
did care, and I couldn't make it look like so it's this thing. So I think it's just really important to actually, let's dive in to what these things that you've heard or been told over the years. If you had more faith, you wouldn't have so much stuff, whatever. Or, you just need to let go of the greed that's making you, the people who I know, which I know a lot of people with clutter because they tell me all their stories, right? Um, they're not bringing clutter into their house out of greed. It is the vast majority of people who struggle with clutter brought stuff into their home out of love for others. The things they were going to do with that stuff, the things that this is a great deal, and I'll bet you so and so would love to have that, or I'll have this when somebody needs it. Like, they're doing this out of a heart of love
Really
for
good
others.
intentions. Yeah.
Yes. And so when somebody says, oh, you need to be less greedy, and they're looking around and going, well, it just, it's so disheartening, right? It's so I somebody had to say it. So I get to be the person to say it.
There you go. I want to talk a little bit about how you can identify with the people, who do feel overwhelmed.
Mhm.
How bad was it for you? What are some of the
Yeah,
things? Were there times where you didn't answer the door because you were
absolutely.
afraid someone would come in and see your
Yeah,
messy house and judge you?
absolutely. I always say it's not like I couldn't have people over. I just needed 2 weeks to get ready.
2 weeks.
You can laugh. It's okay. Yeah, no, I did. If I was going to have something at my house, which I wanted to desperately, like, I wanted to be the home that people could come and gather at, but it was so incredibly stressful for me. So I would block out 2 weeks. And when I say block out, I mean, like, guys, we can't do anything because I have to focus on the house for 2 solid weeks. And I would push everything that didn't have a home, which I didn't realize was actually my big problem, right? I had all this stuff with no place to put it. I would shove it all into a room where I could lock the door. And then I had to train my husband. I cannot tell you how many times we were early married. We'd be having a party, and he'd be like, Dana, why is our bedroom door locked? And I'm like, gosh, you know my system, right? Like, you know my system. I shove everything in there. I lock the door. You better get what you need before anyway, because we had this one door where we had to actually, like, get a screwdriver and take it off of the thing because the actual lock, anyway, long story.
My goodness.
Yeah, but so I would do that, and then I would clean for a week, because the reality is, even though I like things clean and I knew how to clean, you can't clean when there's clutter everywhere, right? And so yeah, it was a big process. I remember it was probably the year before I started the blog. My family started, like, rotating whose house we were going to have Thanksgiving at, and it was my first time to have it at my house. I remember the whole entire fall, like, starting when school started, like, saying no to everything because I had to get my house ready for Thanksgiving. That's how stressful it was to me. So, so yeah, that's what I mean.
No, I mean that it truly people get overwhelmed and they feel like they can't even take a step forward or
Yep.
know where to start. And
Yep.
even starting can feel overwhelming, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What is that number one piece of advice that you give people who are ready, to be like, I need a change here. I've got to change habits and the ways that we do things. How do you help people get motivated to take the first step?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to understand is that organizing and decluttering are not the same thing, but they feel like the same thing. And so when I would look at my messy house with stuff everywhere and I didn't know where things were supposed to go, I always assumed that I needed to get organized. And so I would say, I've got to get organized. I've got to get organized. But when your goal is to get organized, there's planning involved, right? And there's thinking through how this is going to work and how our family operates and all this. And so a lot of times when you say, I've got to get organized, you either sit down and write out a plan, or you go to the store and buy a bunch of bins and baskets and all the stuff, right? With the pictures on the front that are like, that's what I want my space to look like, right? So you do that, come home, and all that energy is gone, and that stuff just stays in a bag by the back door and just adds to the clutter, right? So when I started, I was at such a low point of thinking, I've tried everything, I can't do this. I am actually at such a bad point that I'm not even going to worry about getting organized. I'm just going to declutter. Like, I thought that was somehow failing to just declutter. As soon as I started to declutter, my house started to change. Like, the minute, here's the thing, but if you just declutter, there's nothing to do first. It is literally just getting stuff out of the house. And as soon as I started to get stuff out of the house, my space started to become what I had been wanting from getting organized. Just by getting the excess out, I knew what I had. I knew where it was. I could find it. I could access it. I could put it back easily because there wasn't all this other stuff, right? Now, I don't want to say like, oh, just declutter. Now that's all you need to know. I have a whole 5-step process that I teach for it works for everybody. It's always amazing to me. People are like, I'm actually very organized, but I use your process. And I'm like, yeah, that's so funny to me. But yeah, like it works for anybody, but it's designed for those of us who are like, what? I'm emotionally attached to all my stuff. I have all this stuff because I want it, so like I don't use any kind of emotion-based questions or any open-ended questions like that typically you would hear like, will you ever use it? Do you love it? How do you feel about it? I'm like, I can't ask that because I'm always going to want to keep it. If I do, I have to have fact-based questions. And so the thing I would say first is to give yourself permission to just declutter and get stuff out. And the first step of decluttering is start with the trash, right? Like start with the things that are actual trash. And some people are like, who has trash? Everybody does. Okay. We all do. Like you look in a space, if it's a pile, if it's a packed full cabinet, there's stuff in there that just needs to be thrown away. Okay. So but when I say trash, I mean the stuff that you don't have to decide it's trash. You just have to identify it's trash. So you look at it and you go, is there anything in here there's packaging from something. Oh, actually that is a thing that expired, whatever. And I'm going to get that out. And it gets you moving, but it also takes your brain from looking at a mass of stuff that's overwhelming, and you start to see individual items, and now you know what's in this space, where before it was like, I know there's important stuff in there and there's a lot in there, so it feels like it's all going to be important. I don't have to feel that in a way anymore because I've now adjusted to that. And then you move through the process item by item.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the shame aspect that comes along with, and I know you really address it so well in the book, but I think a lot of people that do see people that, they may categorize as a hoarder or whatever, things have gone too far, overwhelmed or whatever, there's judgment, but then there's personal shame that a lot of people just bring upon themselves, which sounds like it was probably part of your story as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, I talk a lot about identity clutter. There's a lot. Decluttering can often feel like admitting failure when you are decluttering things that you bought for a person or a purpose. And then you realize, oh, that person is out of that phase right now, or has grown out of that thing, or that purpose, I missed out on that opportunity to actually do that thing. In the meantime, it's been sitting in my house in a pile and I haven't been able to, so it's like that can bring a lot of shame and frustration, right? But as you declutter, and that going through that in the decluttering process can make you not want to declutter anymore, right? Like I've experienced this myself, but it's like I would rather not feel those feelings right now. So I'm just not going to deal with the clutter because I have that ability to, move like this in between the clutter. And so if I just don't do that, I don't have to feel that, but then it builds throughout the process of decluttering and experiencing the power of decluttering. I always recommend people start in visible spaces, right? Like start in the spaces that you're going to see so that you experience the benefit of decluttering. And for me, what happened was I was like, oh, it's easier to function in this space when I don't have to move a bunch of stuff off the counter before I do the thing. It makes life easier. And the more I experience that, the more I was ready and able to tackle those other spaces that might have other things that I'm like, oh, I feel so, but I'm like, you know what? I think I'm actually going to choose the space and the ease of this space over these feelings. And then that removes some of that. But the ultimate shame obviously is removed by understanding that God created me this way on purpose, right? And that his grace removes that, because shame is not motivating. That's one of the number one things that I think people trying to help others need to understand is like which things are actually triggering shame, and how can we actually get in there and help somebody as opposed to just pointing out the problem.
Yeah, yeah. I guess on the flip side of that, what are the freedom? What's the freedom like that you find in making these shifts? You made a shift yourself and keeping a more well-managed home. And then you, of course, hear from people who have followed your procedures and tactics and helpful tips. And now they've been able to find freedom. Tell me about what that brings to these women.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's being able to be the person that I wanted to be and not be held back by my house. I last April or whenever it was that we had prom, a bunch of girls were getting ready together and they were supposed to get ready at somebody else's house. And then there was a thunderstorm and the power went out. And so I was able to say, hey, they can come to our house right now. They can come to our house. And those are the moments when I realize, because that's normal for me now, but I still have that moment of awe that I'm at that point
That you
where
can
that I can do that,
accept.
because that's who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the home where teenagers felt comfortable. I wanted to be the home where I was able to offer it to people in need. And now I'm able to be that person, and so I love the emails that I get where people tell me, they're like, such and such happened and I was able to volunteer my house. And like for years, that was the last thing that I would ever do, because it was such a shameful thing for me. I would find a reason why, even though it's really cold outside, we're just going to talk out on the porch. And I mean,
They
I
want
didn't,
to see in the messy kitchen, right?
right. I mean, because it was that bad. And the other thing too is my house is not perfect and it's not always perfect. I can get it great, in 10, 15 minutes. But when people do need to come over unexpectedly, completely unexpectedly, and they see a messy kitchen because, well, I haven't gotten to that yet today or whatever, I now understand how important it is for others to see reality,
Hmm.
because so it's changed me in several ways. Yes, my home is under control to the point where I can let people in anytime. But also, I'm much more willing to show reality because I needed to know that I was not alone. And so even if it's not their house that's the issue for them, I'm like, they need to see that this is real life, like Dana's not perfect. I don't know that anybody would have thought I was perfect anyway, but you know what I mean? Like they need to see that my struggles, because everybody has struggles, and trying to hide them is honestly, it's dangerous in this world, especially spiritually. Like we need to be honest, because if we think that perfection is the goal and we think that perfection is what I'm supposed to be aiming toward, we're never going to meet that, right?
Right.
So it's just disheartening for the people who are watching.
I think the other thing that we as moms can all kind of identify with is, you can have this amazing day at work. You've done all the things. People, are getting contracts, whatever it is, all the things fall into place. You've had a good parenting day, out volunteering, whatever it may be. And then you walk into your messy home and you just automatically feel defeated. Like all the good things that happened in your day. But then when you come home, you're just like, what about, like tackling all of that? What is that weight that we carry? How does our home, the status of our home, have to do with how good we feel about ourselves?
Well, I think for a lot of my people, I know my experience was it was a lot of what caused the confusion because I was like, I'm successful in other things and I cannot seem to do this, right? Like so that disconnect was very confusing to me. And it's just it's everything that's in your home is something that has to be maintained, right? So for me, I realized, yes, I was bringing all these things in, but I was putting myself in a situation where I had so much to do just to live in my house, right? And so as I got rid of things, I started to see if I will stick this in a donate box, I will literally never have to touch it again, never have to pick it up again, never have to shift it from here to there. It cannot get out of place if it doesn't exist in my home. That shift in my thinking was really powerful, right? Because I was like, I always just used to think, well, that's a good thing. Of course I want to have it. And now I'm like, it may be a good thing, but I don't have to deal with it anymore. Right. And so that, giving yourself permission to say it's going to happen. Right. But also, like, if you were in a busy season at work, maybe you need to use paper plates. Like it's okay because sometimes we think, well, but that's not what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, well, if that's what you need to do to make it through this period of life or this, the time or whatever, and maybe if you go, okay, I really don't want to use paper plates all the time, well then maybe that causes a shift in another area, right? Like because I call it your clutter threshold. It's like the amount of stuff that you personally can easily keep under control, and it shifts and changes according to your phase of life, right? If you're in a very busy season of life, you can't handle as much stuff. One of the things I recommend is like pick a plate. Like if you will say, we're just going to use, if we have a family of 5 and we're going to use these 5 plates and I'm going to pack the other ones away for this busy season, it's amazing how those 5 plates will stay under control, right? But if I have 30 plates and I'm in a really busy season, then we use the 5 and life is too busy. We don't have time to watch those. So we use the next 5 and then we use the next 5 and we use the next 5. And then it's overwhelming. And so then we use the next 5, so it's like it all is so much simpler and easier with the less stuff that I have.
Yeah, yeah. And that equals grace that you're giving yourself to use the paper plates or go down to 5. And then also, I lost my mind of thought for a second. I was thinking about grace and then the freedom in that. Like this is just the way we're gonna operate for a while. And I like what you said about seasons too. Like there's times where we have more time to devote to the care of our home and making sure everything's organized. But in those really busy seasons, those practical tips that you have, like I love that. It's kind of interesting. My husband and I travel in our RV sometimes. Like we'll go
Fun.
away.
Yeah.
And in the RV, we have like, 2 coffee mugs, 4 plates, bowl, whatever. And we do just fine. Never am I in want of a stack of plates or, and the way we operate at home is so different. But it's interesting just what making those decisions to be a little more minimalistic,
Mhm.
nothing extreme, but there's freedom in that.
There's so much freedom. When I write, like I'll go away for a couple days to like really zero in on work when I'm working on a book. And it's kind of a game that I play with myself to only use one mug. And I'll have soup as my meal. I'll have my coffee in the morning. I'll have oatmeal. So I'm like, I'm going to drink my coffee and then I'm going to wash it out and I'm going to put oatmeal in it. And then I'm going to wash that out. And then I'll have soup for lunch and I'll wash that out, have maybe a bowl of cereal for dinner. And then I'm going to wash it, so it's like, but it's like this game I play. Cause I'm like, as long as there's only one cup, it never gets overwhelming.
Yeah, there's no dishes to do, right?
Now obviously, like you said, that's a unique situation. And I am not a minimalist, but I am I think it's that grace to give yourself permission to say, you know what? Maybe in a different phase of my life, I was able to have the fancy dishes and my phase of life has changed. And I only have so much energy. I only have so much time. And I want to put that time and energy into something else as opposed to this. And so it's okay to give that up instead of thinking that I have to maintain all of that stuff.
Right, right. So, as the writer of books that help other people who have kind
Mhm.
of been where you have been in the past, do you feel compelled to make sure that your home, like, or do you give your own self grace in what your kitchen counters may look like?
I give myself so much grace. No, I definitely do not have a perfect home at all. I have so much less stuff that that's why I say I'm like, I have so much less stuff, and the stuff I have has a place. So even if every single thing gets out of control in the midst of a book writing or a book launch or whatever, there's just so much less stuff that I can still get it back under control in 15 minutes. It is our goal to run our dishwasher every single evening. Like that is the goal. And I know that. And the people in my family know that. So they know that this is the thing we do that's actually going to maintain the kitchen. Even if not every little teeny tiny thing gets perfect, if we can run the dishwasher, it won't get out of control, right? And so yeah, it's definitely not that I've achieved perfection in any way, but I have gotten to the point where I am in control of my house instead of it controlling me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
that's, I guess that's step one, work on decluttering,
Mhm.
right? And I
Yep.
guess that's just a matter of figuring out, one of the systems of, are you going to throw it away? Are you going to donate it?
Yeah.
Those kind of things, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of where to start.
Yeah. So I have a whole 5-step process. So we go with the trash, and then we get out the stuff that you already know what to do with it. Go do that thing. Any obvious donations. And then at that point, it's ask myself, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And then I take it to that spot. And if there's no room for it, I have to get rid of something else in order to make the room for it, or I need to get rid of it. So it's just like, it's a item by item. Feels like it's going slower, except that all of the progress is like unbacktrackable because things are going to their real homes. I'm not just moving things around like I used to. But yeah, so it's that item by item, making real decisions about this item, giving it a home according to where I would look for it first, and then giving it space within that home. And at that point, if something doesn't have a place to be, it can't be in my house. So,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it sounds
yeah.
so simple when you say it, like, oh, yeah, I can do that.
I mean, it took me a long time to figure it out, but yeah, it really does. It really does work.
I tried for about a year and I need to get back on it because it really did feel good. But I tried the one in, one out
Mm-hmm.
method that I know that you talk about and write about. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to buy this new sweater, then when I get home, I'm going to go through my sweaters and I'm going to choose one to donate and to get rid of. And I did so well with that. And that really is a difference maker. And I think that's a very doable thing too.
It is. Can I just tell a little story first?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the one in, one out rule, I remember hearing at a mom's group when my kids were a little bitty. I was at a mom's group. There was a speaker and she was talking about organization. And somebody said, well, what do you do when you get like a new pair of socks? And she said, oh, the one in, one out rule. And everybody went, okay. And I went, but I had no idea what they were talking about. Really saying one in, one out made no sense to me. I was like, my sock drawer won't even close anyway. Like, what good would it do to get rid of a pair of socks? Like, it just did not compute in my brain. Now I understand. One of the things I teach is the container concept, which is like, I thought containers were for putting things in. I thought a sock drawer was for putting socks in. Actually, it's meant to serve as a boundary. Like, it's meant to contain the item, right? And so that lets the space where the item is going to go, that is finite, determines how much of that item I can have. And I was like, containers contain. This is actually one of the most transformational concepts that I teach people. And so when I realized that, I was like, okay, so the size of my sock drawer determines how many socks I can have, not the math that I want to do in my head of how many times do I wear socks every week, and then which things do I need for winter that I wouldn't use for summer, and blah, blah. Like that's where my brain used to go. But instead I'm like, this is the size of the sock drawer and it needs to be able to shut. Okay, well, then I'm going to get rid of my least favorites, which strangely is like not that hard when I'm looking at it that way and not going, is this a good pair of socks or not? And then once they all fit in this drawer, then if I get a new pair of socks, I'm like, oh, well, now it makes sense to one in, one out. Right? Like it makes sense to go, I got a new pair of socks. They need space to go in there. And which one's my least favorite? Oh, these that looked fine to me yesterday. When I look at it that way, I'm like, oh, actually, they fall down in my shoe every single time I try to wear them, and it just reveals to me that. So those are the kinds of things that I teach that just did not come naturally to me before. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know the one in, one out rule. At one time in my life, I had no idea what that meant.
No idea. Or like, why would you do that? Right. Yeah.
Right.
And I love
Because,
it's kind of a new definition of the word container.
yeah,
I mean, it is to
exactly.
contain items. Like the lid should actually shut on a container, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Beginning of the year, I did the whole Target run and got the
Mhm.
different colored lids and the whole, system or whatever. Got home, maybe got one filled, and then I was just overwhelmed. I'm like, so I still have a stack of containers,
Right.
for the organizing that's not getting done.
Well, because like when you go out shopping for that stuff, that's fun, right?
Oh, it's so fun.
And
Yeah.
then you get home and you're like, well, this part isn't fun. I'll put that off.
Now it's work. Yeah.
I know.
Exactly, exactly. Well, congratulations on the book and all
Thank
of
you.
them. And anytime, moms are helping moms, it's a wonderful thing. And so the book is available wherever books are sold, and there's a few of them. So if you're someone, we should tell listeners that really wants the basics on how do I even get started, which of your books do you recommend?
So if you are just overwhelmed and the kitchen and the laundry and the everything is an issue, I would start with How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. So
I
that
love your
one,
titles.
I know, they're
Do you
never
start with
short.
the title? Do you
What?
start with the title?
I do. It's funny because, when I first started writing books, my agent was like, you don't get to choose the title. Like, you don't have control over that. Like, they'll put in your contract that you get input in your title, but I would guess that they almost never say that you get to choose the title.
Okay.
But all of my titles I have chosen.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of funny because I'm like, because they'll kind of push back a little bit and then they'll basically just always come back to what I had.
Yeah, well, they're very
Yeah.
suiting to you. So, but you say start with that one at the basics,
Yeah.
and then
If you're just, that's the one behind me with the plate. Do you see it?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay, that one,
With the
and then
orange.
the decluttering at the speed of life. That was been a popular book for you, and even in this conversation, you talked
Yeah.
about that's where to start. The decluttering is so
Yes.
important
Yeah.
in helping you to not feel so overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's the one where I teach my 5-step process. I go through all the mindset shifts that you need to make about your stuff and your home and your space. And I, apply the 5-step process to the different spaces in your home and like helping other people, relationships in your life. And I really dive into grief and its relationship with clutter as well in that one. And then organizing for the rest of us. Oh, I've got one right here. Organizing for the rest of us is what they call a gift book. I'm not sure
Oh
who
yeah,
gives not sure who gives organizing books to other people, but whatever. It's like got pictures and everything's like in tip short little format, where all the words are in the other books, but that one's like, so that's the one people will tell me they leave in the bathroom for their family members to just flip through because it's very
yeah,
flip throughable. Like this
yeah.
one woman said that her husband came out of the bathroom and he was like, have you heard of this thing called the container concept? And she was like, yes,
Like it worked. It
I
worked.
know, I know.
That's the subtle. That one's the one if you're going to be subtle. Or if you're someone who's so overwhelmed you don't even have time to read
Yeah.
the book
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
getting organized, start with that one, right?
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. And then this one, I'm tackling the spiritual side of things because it's a very real thing, but it's not a spiritual way to declutter. It's the spiritual freedom that allows you to declutter. Just if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, no,
Distinction.
absolutely. I'm excited for you. I know it's a big
Too.
deal when there's finally a book that you have probably spent so much time pouring yourself into and now it's out. So congratulations to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, now that we've shared dozens of episodes, surely we're friends, right? Well, I have a favor to ask. Would you take a minute to leave a 5-star rating and a review on whatever app you're using to listen to the podcast? This helps so much with reaching a wider audience. We'd also love for you to subscribe to our Insider newsletter and, of course, follow us on social media and on YouTube at Got It From My Momma. That's right, you can watch any of these episodes on YouTube. Visit our website, gotitfrommymama.tv, and you can get links to all of these things. I'm so thankful you're along for the journey.